Hello class, today is Wednesday, April 7th, 2020. Today we'll continue talking about 3D shapes. Our job today, let's read together, is I will compare and contrast 3D shapes. When we compare and contrast, we are talking about things that are the same and things that are different. So let's begin by looking at our first two shapes, the cone and the cylinder. And before we can really compare and contrast these shapes, we need to describe them. And remember on Monday when we talked about describing 3D shapes, we said we could describe the faces, the vertices, and the edges. So let's go ahead and do that first. Faces, remember the faces are the flat surfaces on a 3D shape. If we look at the cone, we see one flat surface here at the bottom, so that would be one face. Let's go ahead and mark that on here. Right here. Now if we talk about the vertices, remember the vertices are the corners. Is there a corner, a point here? Yes, we see that here, one. So we'll plug that in, one. And then the edges is where the sides meet together. And so we do not have any edges on the cone. So we're going to say 0. Now let's take a look at the cylinder right here. So again, we're going to look at the faces. How many flat surfaces do we see on the cylinder? Let's count. 1, 2. So we'll plug in 2 here. Do we have any corners on our cylinder? I don't see any, do you? 0. And then for our edges, do we see any edges on this cylinder? I would say no. Okay, now that we have described the cone and the cylinder, now we can compare and contrast these two shapes. We can tell what is the same about these two shapes. And we can talk about what is different about the two shapes. So let's take a look. See, faces, this one has 1. Cylinder has 2. So is that the same or different? If you said different, that's correct. Let's look at the vertices. 1 for the cone, 1 vertex, 0 for the cylinder. So that would be different. Let's look at the edges. 0 edges for the cone, 0 edges for the cylinder. So we could say that is the same. So now we could go back and say that a cone and cylinder are the same in that they both do not have any edges. We could say the cone and the cylinder are different in that the cone has 1 face and the cylinder has 2 faces. The cone has 1 vertice, or 1 vertex, to say it correctly, and the cylinder has 0. So that's how we compare and we contrast 3D shapes. Let's do the next one together. Though I can't hear you, I know that you are following along. Okay, so our first job here is before we can compare and contrast these two shapes, we need to describe them. So we'll start with the number of faces for the cube. Let me come over here and get ready to type in. All right, so when we're talking about the cube, we talk about the faces, and that's the flat surfaces on a cube. I have my die right here. So we know that a die has 6 sides, so we know by that there are 6 flat surfaces on a cube. So we'll mark that there. Now we want to talk about the vertices, the corners where the sides come and meet at a point. So if we look at a cube and we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 vertices. Now when we talk about the edges, we're talking about where the sides come to meet. So this is an edge, this is an edge, this is an edge, this is one, back here, over here, over here. Let's see if we can count those and get the number. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 edges. Let's move on to this shape. Now this shape we have not talked about. It's a pyramid, and the name of this pyramid is a square pyramid. The reason for the name square pyramid is if you notice the base, the face of this 3D shape is in a square shape. So that's why this is called a square pyramid. Now we're going to talk about the faces, vertices, and the edges for this shape. So let's take a look at our square pyramid. And if we count the faces, there's one square pyramid. And then there are 1, on the other side 2, on the other side 3, on the other side 4 triangular bases. So that's a total of 1 square base and 4 triangle bases or faces. That would be 5. Now we talk about the vertices, the corners. When we talk about the vertices, we have to talk about the points where the sides come together. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that will be 5 vertices. Let's come down to the edges. The edges are going to be, this is an edge, this is an edge, that's an edge, and over on the other side up that way is another edge, here, 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 and here. So if we talk about edges, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the one back there would make 8 edges. All right, now that we have described the cube and the square pyramid, now we're ready to compare and contrast. Remember, compare and contrast what is the same and what is different about these two shapes. Okay, so let's look at the faces for the cube. There's 6 faces for the cube, 5 faces for the square pyramid. That's different. Vertices, 8 for the cube, 5 for the square pyramid. That's different. What about the edges? 12 here, 8 here. Now, so we seem to, if we compare this information on these two shapes, they're different. But I'm thinking of one thing that could be the same about these two shapes. What could be the same? Take a look at the faces. I'm going to give you a minute to think about that. That's a clue. Look at the face. The faces. We have square faces here. We have a square face and triangle face. So if you said something that is the same between these two shapes is that they both have square faces, you would be correct. This one has a square face. This also has a square face. So that is something that is the same between these two. Now, I want you to do the same for these two bottom ones. Here, we're going to do it all together as well. This is a rectangular pyramid, and this is the square pyramid that we just talked about up here. Can you guess why this is called a rectangular pyramid? I bet you can. If you said that this is a rectangular pyramid because it has a rectangular, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back and fix that. That's not a rectangular pyramid, is it? The shape on the base is a triangle. It's a triangular pyramid. I know that if we were together in class, some of you would be raising your hand and saying, Ms. Castillo, that's not a rectangle, that's a triangle. So I know that you guys would be helping me out. You see, sometimes teachers make mistakes too. So let's go back and talk about that. Triangular pyramid, square pyramid. Why is this one called a triangular pyramid? If you said it's because the base is a triangle, you would be correct. Let's talk about the faces, the vertices, and the edges for the triangular pyramid. So we're going to start here and come up here to the faces. We have one back here on the bottom where it sits. And, oops, here we go. Let me go back here. There we go. Okay, so for our triangular pyramid, how many faces? We have 1, 2, and then the other one that you can't see behind here, that's 3 in the bottom one, so that would be 4 faces. And how many vertices? How many points? Let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 vertices, so those are the 4 corners. And then our edges, and that's going to be 6 edges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 edges. Now over here on the square pyramid, we can go back and we can just fill that in. We've answered that question here. 5 and 5. So we can tell and look here at what are some things that are the same and different. The faces are different, 4 and 5. The vertices are different, they're 4 and 5. And the edges are different, 6 and 8. What could be the same about these? We could say that the faces are that this has a triangle faces. This one has triangle faces, so that's something that is the same in both of these. So I hope that you enjoyed this lesson and on comparing and contrasting our 3D shapes. I now want to move on to your activity and assignment for today. You are going to open up your journal and you're going to write the date. You can write compare, contrasting at the top, and then you're going to have a number 1 and number 2. You are going to read it with me. Look at these pictures, answer the questions. So you're going to look at the cube and the cylinder. For number 1, how are the objects the same? You'll write for me here how they're the same. Number 2, you will write for me how are the objects different. Again, if you have any questions on this assignment or on anything here, because I know this is all new for us, please reach out to me, ask questions, and I will help you in any way that I can. Thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye.